All right. Hello again, Avengers, and welcome. Another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 272, I think. Somewhere in there. So, today. Got nothing. I am, still having nightmares, still having really bad times trying to sleep. I don't know where the nightmares are coming from. I really don't, but they are remarkably unpleasant. In addition to that, I've been playing Echoes of Wisdom. If anyone doesn't know, Echoes of Wisdom is the newest Zelda game. It's a 2D Zelda game. It uses... I'm not 100% certain on this, but it looks like it uses the same engine as the Link's Awakening remake that came out a few years ago. And if it doesn't use the same engine, it definitely uses the same art style. And thus far, it is charming. It is absolutely lovely and charming. I'm not going to really talk about plot or anything in it. So I don't want to spoil anything, and I really have been having a lot of fun playing it. But one of the things that is most unique about it, and it was something that excited me when I first saw the trailers and everything. There's a game that came out years ago on the 3DS called A Link Between Worlds. It was a direct sequel to The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which is my favorite Zelda game. And A Link Between Worlds introduced a few things that were different. One, instead of finding the kind of magic items in a dungeon, there was a central place and you rented them. Meaning if you got knocked out, if you ever got knocked unconscious, all of your rented items went back. You had to go and re-rent them. They weren't incredibly expensive, but it was frustrating. If you collected enough rupees, you could eventually buy them. And once you bought them, you could collect these little snail things and turn them into the mama snail, and she would upgrade them to do more powerful things. So that in and of itself was okay, but the big game changer for the game was the merging system. Basically, Link had been turned into a picture, but he had a special bracelet on that made him be able to stop being a picture. And so almost any flat surface Link could merge into and then walk along it and move. And it meant that puzzle design in A Link Between Worlds was massively different than any other Zelda game, because due to the fact whenever you merged, you could basically move in basically one dimension. You could move left or right, but that's still horizontally. You couldn't move vertically at all. And so by getting yourself to different heights and then just walking around, you could create these really interesting complex puzzles. And it was really cool. Massively changed how you looked at solving puzzles and the things like that. Because old school, like A Link to the Past Zelda, the most you could do is you could have switches that change things, and then sometimes you'd have to interact with switches. Or one of the big improvements in A Legend of Zelda was multi-floor dungeons. Which wasn't entirely new. They had them in Zelda 2, but there were multi-floor puzzles in A Link to the Past, where the dungeons would actually, like the floors would actually sit on top of each other, and you would sometimes have to fall from an upper floor to get something on a lower floor. Like it was very innovative, and it made all of the dungeons just seem that much larger. Same kind of leap forward when we were talking about A Link Between Worlds. So back to Echoes of Wisdom, the gimmick, because every Zelda game has a gimmick, every single one of them does. The gimmick for this game is the echo system. Basically, there are certain objects, and I think I don't know 100%. Everything but bosses thus far. You can copy them and create echoes of them, and that in and of itself is interesting because Zelda by default does not have a way to defend herself. And so your kind of default ability to attack is using these echoes. Like one of the first echoes you get is a little slime thing. And so to deal with early enemies, you literally summon the slime and wait for it to go over and attack. Well, I thought, and then obviously the objects, you can basically use the echoes to build bridges and other stuff like that. And so that in and of itself, I'm like, oh, that's going to mean that puzzle design is going to be a little bit different, simply because when you can build your own ladder or build your own stairs out of various objects, the most, I kid you not, the most useful object in the entire game is a bed. It's nonsense, but it's 100% true. You will use the bed constantly. It is the most valuable thing in your entire Arenzal. It's nuts that it's that useful, but it is. So that in and of itself will kind of change puzzle design. But something I wasn't expecting is some of the echoes have additional properties to them. Like one of the echoes you'll get very early in the game is a slime that has a wick and a fire on the top of it. It's a little like candle slime thing. And that in and of itself is kind of cool. Like you can use that to attack Gibdos and set them on fire because Gibdos don't like fire. But you also can use it to light torches, which lighting torches and puzzles involving, darkness and stuff like that have been a staple of the game since the original Legend of Zelda. One of the items you get in the original NES Legend of Zelda is, they call it a candle, but it's a little lantern. And you could use it to illuminate rooms and burn down bushes. So the idea of using fire to do things that affect the world has always been in Zelda. But now you have this little creature that you can use to light torches, and as you go, like you can do things like you can pick up your echoes and throw them. And so you can actually take the little torch dude, pick him up, and throw him at a torch that there's no other way that you could have been able to light it. And there's a few other ones that are just really, really interesting uses of these echoes that I wasn't expecting. Again, I'm not going to go into to details, but a lot of the things that you used to need an item for is now replaced with certain echoes. And a lot of times you won't really realize how valuable an echo is until you are put in a situation where you have to use that echo. And you go, oh wait a minute. Oh, this is really, really useful. And it's meant that, again, there's a lot of different ways to solve puzzles. And it's a 2D Zelda game, and that comes with, like, if your only Zelda experience is Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, this is going to feel very, very weird, because while there are some things in it that kind of feel Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom-esque, like it does have kind of an open world, and because of the ecosystem you can like build stuff and kind of break the game using the physics engine. So there's some little aspects like that. But for the most part, this is a 2D Zelda game. This is a significantly more traditional Zelda game. You have dungeons that you have to go to. Dungeons that you have to go to generally in a particular order. You have some choice as you go through the game, but it is significantly more structured than either of the either Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. And I personally like that because, and that's one of the things that makes the dungeons in this so interesting is generally when you get into the dungeon, when you get in there, there will be a new monster you haven't seen before. That once you fight it, you learn the echo, and then you use that dungeon or use that monster for the rest of the dungeon. In the same way that old school Zelda games, every dungeon had a special item, a magic item that you would get, and the dungeon was basically built around teaching you how to use that item. Again, if you're just familiar with the Switch Zeldas, basically dungeons were like very, very large shrines. Because the shrines, again, the shrines are all designed around a single principle. Dungeons are kind of similar. The difference being they're not so hyper focused on a single aspect of a single principle. Like in a traditional Zelda game that was using like the rune system in Breath of the Wild, you would have a dungeon that was dedicated entirely to the Magnesis rune and all the different ways you can use the Magnesis rune. Yeah, overall it's a super charming little game. I think I have like 10 hours into it thus far. It might be less. It might be only like 5 or 6. I don't know. My brain doesn't measure time very well. But I have enjoyed every last second of it. And there's still systems that I haven't gotten a chance to play around with, which to me just means that they're going to introduce them more later, which is very, very cool. And I'm just having an absolute blast with it. It's something like, again, it's not that I don't like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. They are phenomenally good games. They just, to me, aren't Zelda games. And what I mean by that, and I know a lot of people go, yes, they are, because they're not. The thing that has always interested me about Zelda games is how each, like, dungeons are a massive, massive part of Zelda games. They have been there since the first one. They have been in every single Zelda game except for Breath of the Wild. And the idea of kind of going into a place, finding a new item in that place, learning how to use it in the dungeon, and then having to go out into the overworld and find all of these new areas that you can now access because you have this new item that you've already learned how to use. And that just doesn't happen in either Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom is slightly better with it, where each of the powers, your little helper dudes, each one of those guys, they do technically have their own dungeon where you learn how to use their particular power set. But for the most part, the powers that they give you don't really change anything outside of those dungeons. They're useful, don't get me wrong, but you can go literally everywhere in the world without going into a single dungeon and getting a single power. You can beat the game without ever meeting a single other sage. So to me, it's just not. They're brilliant games. They're just not Zelda games. And Echoes of Wisdom is a Zelda game through and through. It's so much fun. It's so charming. I don't know if I'm just like a super like awesome gamer or what, but I haven't really been challenged that much by it. Like, there's been some situations where I've been surprised and I've died a couple of times because of it. But I wouldn't say anything has been particularly challenging. And that's kind of how Zelda games will work. Once you understand the system, like, they're not Dark Souls or anything like that. So, I don't know. I'm having an absolutely wonderful time. So yeah, that's all I've been doing last day or so, is just sleeping and playing that. So, anyway, it's going to be all for me today. I will see you guys tomorrow. All right? Bye-bye.